Hi, I'm Tom Spiegel with the Spiegel Law Firm, where we represent people who've been wrongfully terminated or are afraid that they might be. And today I want to talk to you about the increasing prevalence of pregnancy discrimination lawsuits. Now, one might think, if you're not the victim of one of these lawsuits, that we've moved past the 1950s and that pregnancy wouldn't be a big an issue in the workplace. In fact, when I wrote my book in 2015, You're Pregnant, You're Fired, I had a number of people say, does this really still happen? And the answer is, yeah, it happens a lot. And the rising number of cases being filed is proof of that. But one question is, well, why? Why are we seem to move backwards, in how we treat workers, particularly workers who are pregnant or have small children? There are a number of reasons for this. And one of the statistics, Bloomberg just wrote an article about it, is looking at what are EEOC filings. The EEOC is the federal agency that is responsible for enforcing the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. And in order to assert a claim under it, you have to file a charge with that agency first. And so, you can look at the data and year over year and see how many charges have been filed. And in 2020, we saw a spike, particularly going into 2021, and everybody's like, well, why is that? One of it is procedural, and that is, like, during the pandemic, like many government organizations, the EEOC really curtailed its operations. So they stopped processing charges. You could still file them, but they weren't doing anything with them. They were just sitting there. So now that the pandemic is over, EEOC is back. They've been processing these, so there's going to be a bump. But that doesn't seem to be the sole explanation. And another one is that the pandemic has had a particularly negative effect on pregnant women and parents generally. Employees with children that have to work at home are at a significant disadvantage, as anyone who has children and tried to work at home will tell you. There are constant interruptions, not to mention just the added burden of child care that many parents have had to take on. Of course, we all want to care for our children, but generally they were at school. Somebody else fed them lunch. Somebody else cleaned up after them, or asked them to do it themselves. Somebody else was sending them out to the playground as part of their schooling, and now that's all come back to the home front. And so you've got people trying to take Zoom calls and do the work that they normally do while making peanut butter jelly sandwiches and making sure that brother and sister, aren't having a cage match in the living room. So these sorts of factors have negatively impacted both pregnant workers and those with children, because they often get the short end of the stick. And whether an employer means to or not, sometimes when they're looking to cut corners, particularly during the pandemic, when a lot of employers had to really kind of shrink their workforce, some managers are going to privilege the 28-year-old male who has no kids, who's willing to work around the clock, over the 35-year-old newly pregnant worker who they believe is not going to be as effective. That is illegal discrimination, but those are the things that happen all the time in these cases. So those are the two big factors that are affecting pregnancy discrimination. Another one, with these cases, are cases where a pregnant worker needs an accommodation. And by that, I mean they need some workplace change. For instance, they need to, not have a lifting or a weightlifting requirement. Some jobs say, okay, you got to be able to lift 50 pounds. Well, for some pregnancies, that's temporarily not possible, or they need a different work schedule, or they need to take, some women need to take more bathroom breaks, whatever it may be. Asking for an accommodation in the workplace is something that is protected under some laws, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, for instance. There's also the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which is pending in Congress. We'll see if it ever gets passed, but that would provide pregnant workers with more rights to request these accommodations without first proving they have a medical condition covered under the ADA. And there are any number of state laws, for instance, in Virginia and DC, that require workers to offer reasonable accommodations to pregnant employees. But that complicates the matter further for those people who are pregnant, who might need a change at their work. It gives employers, not that people are looking for this, but it gives more opportunity for employers to violate the law. Because they think they shouldn't have to give the accommodation, they don't want to make special circumstances, they don't understand the law, and so they illegally refuse those accommodations. So all of those things, kind of in the pressure cooker of the pandemic, are coming to the fore, and I think we will see those trends continue. Of course, there are many great employers who bend over backwards for pregnant employees and those with young children, but there are going to continue to be some, particularly when they're making hard economic decisions, that make the illegal choice to let go of the pregnant woman or the employee with small children because they assume that they won't be as productive, which often is just not true.